Welcome to Healthy and Wealthy Conversations, where we discuss everything that leads to health and wellness for your whole spirit, soul, mind, and body. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Healthy and Wealthy Conversations. I am your host, Casey Bell, and today's guest we have today is Chris Miles. Let's get started. Starting from the beginning, so you are an expert on finances, did you grow up in a household that way, or were your parents more so not as knowledgeable as you are?
Not at all. Yeah. There's the only knowledge they gave me, they said, well, my dad especially was like, just save everything, right? Save everything you can. And that was it. And my mom, she was more of the starving artist, right? She was a professional oil painter. If you've ever seen Bob Ross paint the happy little clouds and stuff, she was trained by the same painter that trained him. And so she was more like invest in your business, but she didn't really have a lot coming out of the business. So if anything, I probably got bad examples about money. But when I was coming out of college, or I was trying to figure out what to do as an entrepreneur venture, because I was going to become a business consultant, that was my original goal. I thought, well, I should have a real life business. If I'm going to try to consult people on their own businesses, I should have experience too. So the first business that came my way was actually becoming a financial advisor, like the mainstream traditional kind of person that you see. And so I started doing that, ended up dropping out of college with one paper to write before I got my bachelor's, and went the entrepreneur path. And after about 4 years, realized that financial advisors were broke, and even their clients weren't making money either. And so luckily, I was able to meet somebody that was in real estate investing. He was able to kind of correct me to say, hey, listen, all that stuff you've been teaching doesn't work. And I'd already seen the evidence over the 4 years saying, yeah, you know what? If it had worked, wouldn't I have more financially free clients? In fact, wouldn't there be anybody in this office that's a financial advisor, financially free themselves? Even those guys have been working since the late 70s, and they weren't either. So as a result, I quit in March of 06, vowed never to teach about money again. And then actually was able to become financially independent myself. I was able to get out of that rat race where I had enough passive income to quit. And so I was able to do that later in 2006. And that's what I've been doing since from that point on, 2007 onward. Actually, I came out of retirement to teach people how to get out of the rat race.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because prior to going on, I was thinking about saying this. I think the reason why so many people are unsuccessful is, even though they can see for themselves they're unsuccessful, they're afraid to admit not so much the information they have is wrong, that the people who gave them the information was wrong. Because as children, we were taught it's disrespectful to disrespect your elders. And so we think that if we call our elders wrong, we're being disrespectful. So we'll continue doing what we can see doesn't work. So we're not disrespecting those who taught us how to do it. And it's sad that we would rather hold on to something we can clearly see. I mean, I was shocked when you said that many financial advisors are not financially literate, or they're not themselves, I guess, need an advisor themselves. And I simply think it's because we were told to do this, so we're going to do it, even though we don't see it's working.
Yeah.
And so I guess the next question would be, what advice would you give someone who is struggling with making change because they're afraid they're disrespecting someone, even though they can see what they're doing just isn't working?
Well, I feel like the best service you can do for anybody is by doing what's best for you, right? And I don't mean doing what's best for you at the exclusion of everybody else, right? I don't mean that at all. I don't mean try to, screw everybody else over so you get whatever you want. Because the truth is, if you want to get anything of any real value in life, it requires you doing things that help serve other people. It adds value. It solves problems for other people. And I truly believe that be able to live the best life you can, the best version of you possible, is one of the greatest services you can bring to this planet. So if it means that going against what you've been taught or what somebody that you respect said, that's okay, because the truth is none of us are perfect. There's things I'm learning all the time, realizing that I'm not perfect, that I'm doing things the wrong way. And if I want to be correct, if I want to be doing things that are beneficial for my life, I have to course correct and change too. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, like I said, like no disrespect to my dad, no disrespect to all the people that train me as a financial advisor, or even guys like Dave Ramsey who do great service of the world for certain people. But The truth is that, you can get to a certain level and then you'll notice you'll stop. You just won't quite get there. It's just like in health, right? When you're dealing with health, you might do something that works for a while, but then you start hitting this plateau. You just stop progressing because you've maxed out what you can do with that current knowledge. You got to take it to that next level. You got to be able to find a way to break past those limits by thinking and doing something different.
Oh, so I know there are multiple things that need to be done. Can you just share with when you first came to the conclusion, someone told you, okay, apparently you're being a financial advisor is just not the good thing to do. What was the first thing out of however many things there are? What was the first thing you recognized you were doing wrong?
Well, I think the part of it was the information I was teaching, right? So if you've met with anybody or even just heard people on TV talking about financial advice, it's all the same, right? It's spend nothing, save everything, save it forever, don't touch it, put away for a long haul, right? And if the stock market, if you're in the stock market, if it goes down, make that long haul last longer because you're gonna have to wait forever for it to come back. And then hopefully someday you have something to live on, right? And they tell you to live on less than the interest. In fact, even the Wall Street Journal, some of the assumptions I was making 20 years ago that we were questioning about the whole 4% rule, that rule says that if you want to retire, you shouldn't pull out more than 4% of whatever you have. So if you want to have an $80,000 a year lifestyle, that 4% rule would say, oh, well, then I need $2 million to live on 4%, which is 80,000 a year. But just like the Wall Street Journal came out with a few months ago, the 4% rule doesn't work and it's dead. I would say no more than 2 or 3%. So that means if you're like hoping for that $80,000 a year lifestyle, you happen to save $2 million, which is not an easy feat to do, even with the stock market, right? And then you do that and then you realize, oh, I can only pull out maybe 40, 50, 60,000 a year and then I have to pay tax on that money. So now I'm living almost below the poverty line as a multimillionaire. You think about that, you're like, wait a minute, does this really work? That I'm supposed to be a multimillionaire to at least be on the lower end of middle class or upper lower class, right? And that's just not good. And that's what we're seeing. The baby boomers are starting to see it already. And I saw it. Even with financial advisors, like I mentioned, they can retire off their commissions, the business streams of income they have coming in, but they can't retire off of their savings because it hasn't worked. So when I realized that I was putting in wrong numbers, for example, we would say that the stock market averages 12% a year, right? But when I actually looked at reality, stopped listening to everybody else for what they would tell me, and I was just regurgitating information, I found out it was more like 8% a year. And that makes a massive difference. Give you an example. I used to teach like 20 years ago. I would tell people, if you just save up $100 a month, every month for 40 years, you'll have $1 million, right? Because at 12%, it'll be about $1 million. It's actually like 979,000, right? But either way, close enough. The problem is if you put that number instead at 12% return, put it at 8%, now it goes down to like $370,000. So it's not just a little bit difference, just that little 4% may end up having you have only about a third of the money you thought you would have in retirement, right? So when I saw that, I thought, oh, well, that's depressing. And then we talk about inflation, right? Which is a big hot topic this year. Like what's the real inflation rate? We're hearing things like 6, 8%, something like that. But the truth is it's way higher than what the government says because they've manipulated the numbers to make it lower so they don't have to pay as much in Social Security, right? Well, that being said, like when I was showing people like maybe 2%, 3% inflation, but that would be more depressing because then you have to save more because $1 million today was definitely not like $1 million 40 years ago in the late 70s. $1 million made you feel like you were massively rich, where now about 9% of people in the United States are worth over $1 million, right? Where they're actually net worth millionaires. That's a much bigger number than it used to be because inflation, it doesn't seem that much anymore. It doesn't buy as much. Well, with that inflation, I put those numbers in, it would get more depressing. So I would lower the number to either 0 or 1% inflation to give some people some hope. But in truth, it's not 3% or 2%. It's probably more like at least 5 or 6. So you start putting those numbers in with only 8% returns in the market, you start to realize it's virtually impossible to retire from the typical 401ks, IRAs, retirement plans that you would be using. that was the big thing that really rocked my world, right? Because I started thinking, well, what do I do with this? My pocketbook is tied to these numbers working, right? Well, what if it's all overpromise and underdeliver, which is pretty much what the entire financial advising system's been? What do we do? That was the big awakening. Once I realized that, at least it disturbed me. It got me to the point to say, I need to do something different. So what I started to learn was different with what I do now, and what I've done to get myself to be financially independent is focus on cash flow. What actually gives me real passive income? So give you an example, just using easy numbers, right? If someone has $100,000, they try to pull out 3% a year, they're only living on $3,000 a year, right? You can't live on that. That's nothing. But that same $100,000, if I use that to buy like a real estate property and I make 1% a month off that, or 12% a year, which is kind of my baseline benchmark, what I go for my properties. Well, that's $1,000 a month, or $12,000 a year. 12,000 is much better than 3,000, right? Same money, but it gives you a very different kind of income. I've had people, I had a guy that had $3 million sitting in cash. And he's like, I met with a financial advisor and he said, keep going. Maybe in the next 13 years, you'll be able to retire with and he already had 3 million. He was putting away a few $100,000 a year too, to try to get there. I told him, I said, based on his goal, he would have to save $15 million. So he'd have to quintuple his money in 12, 13 years. Versus if he did it the way we're talking about, where it's focusing more on income, not just on what you get, like living on less than the interest, gambling in the stock market that has lower returns. He could actually retire in the next couple of years with a $500,000 a year lifestyle, like a $500,000 a year lifestyle. He could actually retire this year about $250,000 or $300,000 a year if he wanted to. So that's the difference. It was such a big wake up call that that's why by March of 2006, a few months after I started waking up to this, started to wake up to this more, I realized I'm like, there's actually hope, like real hope, where I didn't have that as a financial advisor. Knowing now that people could actually get their money working for them harder and get them to retire sooner and give them their life back, right? It's not just about retire early so you can have fun. It's literally about how can you have those years, that time you can never get back? How can you have those years with your family? How can you actually have more freedom to be with them now versus work, and then hopefully not die in the meantime? That's what most people are doing right now.
All right. So to follow up, because when you talked about the 4%, when you're investing, you don't take more than 4% out. I think it sounds like many people make what they call safe decisions when it comes to their finances. Mm-hmm. I think though most people don't. There's a difference between making a safe decision and making a decision out of fear, and it may not necessarily be the best decision. So how do you take the fear out of money? Because most people, because as you said, we weren't taught, we fear it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, like you said, you just said the answer right there. I mean, it's what we're taught, right? What do we know? What knowledge do we have? That's the difference between fear and not having fear. Most of us have fear of the unknown, right? We have fear of the things that are unfamiliar to us. When people tell me, for example, some people say, well, Chris, you're talking about investing in real estate or in like oil investments or land or whatever it might be, right? When they hear me do that kind of stuff, they automatically think in their head, that must be high risk. That must be risky, right? Especially when I'm getting high returns. But the truth is, if you really look at risk, which is the chance of losing, right? That's the definition of risk, is chance of loss. When you look at it from that standpoint, the truth is most everybody out there today are taking high risks and getting very poor returns in comparison. Where I take low risks, I try to make sure I can ensure I get my money back, right? I buy real assets. I don't buy things that are zeros and ones on a computer screen, right? I'm buying real assets that I know pay me real money. Most people, their little mind is telling them that they have comfort or security in those numbers, those zeros and ones on a computer screen, right? But the truth is that there's no certainty there. So when people say when they call themselves a conservative investor, and they look at me as being risky, the truth is it's opposite. Is that really they're not a conservative investor? They're actually a comfortable saver. They're just comfortable doing what the masses have done. But again, the masses are failing financially, right? They're not financially free. So why would you follow the masses to get a guaranteed failure, right? So in truth, if you're looking at chance of losing, you're actually, if you're saving in 401ks and IRAs right now into retirement plans or mutual funds, you have pretty much have almost 100% chance of losing. You are a high risk gambler. And in fact, you're really doing something that hasn't been proven to work yet. Where I've done things that tens of millions of Americans alone, not including people worldwide, but tens of millions of Americans have done the strategies I've done and have made it work. So who's the risk taker here? Who's the person that's actually gambling versus the one that you think is gambling? But again, it takes that perspective shift. You have to always have a perspective shift, and it requires new education, just like in health, right? So many people think that, oh, I gotta eat the 4 food groups. And they think, oh yeah, bread, baseline. I gotta eat lots and lots of bread and grains. Where in truth, that's actually doing a lot of harm to people, especially with GMOs and or things like that, right? In truth, we should be eating a lot more fresh vegetables and fruits, but they don't pitch us that. They even pitch us that milk does a body good. Pass it on. But the truth is, all you're passing on is more sickness, more unwellness. And so if you think about the masses are taught one thing, but the results, it's really from the minority that get the best results. The majority that follow those things don't have the right health. It's no different with money. The masses, if you're following the masses right now, that means you're doing it wrong. You got to follow the minority that are actually doing it right.
Okay, so somewhat off the subject, what is Beyond Rice and Beans?
Yeah, so I have an ebook online there that's called Beyond Rice and Beans, 7 Secrets to Free Up Cash Today. So during my hardest financial time, right, I actually went from a place, you hear me talking about how I was able to retire twice, right? So I was able to become financially independent in 2006. In 2007, I came out of retirement to teach people how to get out of the rat race. But I forgot my own rules that got me successful in the first place. I started cutting off my passive income streams to focus on an active one, a business with some partners. 2, I started gambling more with my investing. I started taking higher risk versus taking the lower risk path, right? Doing all those things where when the recession hit, it hit me hard. In fact, I went from millionaire to upside down millionaire. I was in debt over $1 million towards the middle of the recession. And so I had to dig my way back out of it. I had to get resourceful. So I stopped teaching people how to get out of the rat race, but I did start teaching people how to find money, because that's the thing I was doing. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any credit, but I had to get resourceful. How do I move money around? How do I use, get my money to last me? Especially when I was in the hole, 15,000, 16,000 a month, I had to get myself back. So Beyond Rice and Beans actually teaches what I did to help me find more money and dig out of the hole, where by 2016, I was financially independent for the second time. That means that I didn't have to keep working anymore. I was work optional, right? And the cool thing is I've taught hundreds and hundreds of other clients how to do the same thing. So in Beyond Rice and Beans, it talks about the top 7 ways that myself and my clients have freed up on average $34,000 a year, or about $2,800 a month. So really quick read, doesn't take long to get through, maybe a half an hour to read it. But if you apply it, it'll make a much, much, much bigger difference in your life.
What is just one of ways out of the 7? Give me one.
Yeah, like for example, I mentioned I had a lot of debt, right? I won't talk about, going and track your money. That's something that everybody should be doing. That's one of them. So I guess I'll give you 2. So track your money is important, tracking income and expenses. Well, after you've done that, like sometimes people will look at debt as being evil, right? But the truth is debt can be good or bad, depending on how it's being used. What I realized when I was in my situation, trying to figure out, should I invest my money? Should I pay off a debt? What would be the best route to free up the most monthly cash flow so I have more money per month? I stopped looking at the interest rate. And that's one of the big tips I gave in there, is actually ignore the interest rate. Don't get hyper focused on that like all the banks tell you to do and the Dave Ramseys of the world tell you to do, right? Because in truth, the interest rate's not what's creating all the stress. It's the minimum monthly payment that they make you pay. That's where the stress is. It's the monthly outgo, which you have to pay as a bill every single month. There's where the stress is. So instead of looking at the interest rate, instead look at the balance divided by the minimum monthly payment. I call it a cash flow index, right? You take the balance of that loan divided by the minimum monthly payment, and it will give you a score and give you an index number. So for example, say that you have a $10,000 car loan and a $10,000 credit card. Now, let's say that $10,000 car loan has a payment of $500 a month. while the $10,000 credit card has a payment of $200 a month. Now, if you were to ask Dave Ramsey or almost anybody else, even financial advisors, they would say, pay off that high interest credit card, right? Get rid of that thing. But in truth, when it comes to actually giving people more financial freedom, again, it's not the interest rate that people are worried about. It's that monthly payment. Because if all you had was $10,000, you pay off that credit card, sure, you free up $200 a month, but you still have that $500 a month car loan that you have to pay, right? But if you reverse it, if you pay off that $500 car loan, that you free up that $500 a month, now you get more options because you can still take that $500, pay it towards that other credit card and pay it off faster. But if something goes wrong, which inevitably at some point things are going to happen in life, life happens, right? If something goes wrong, at least now you don't have to make that $500 a month payment. You know, if there's something that unexpected that happens in your life, or maybe you get laid off or something, you would much rather be paying $200 a month than $500. So the index would show you that because you want to pay the lowest score first. So if you take that 10,000 divided by that $500 payment, that's a 20. But 10,000 divided by the $200 a month payment is a 50. So we want to pay the 20 index first. And by the way, if it's below 40, you want to focus on paying those off first. It'll be better than trying to invest it usually. Unless it's like a low rate mortgage, student loan, car loans, then usually I wait for it to hit a 20 or less before I pay it off. But I'll tell you, I mean, not only has it worked for myself, but where I was able to get myself breathing again. So many of my clients, I had one client in North Dakota that we were able to pay off certain loans, consolidate, refinance a mortgage and do some things. We freed up $6,000 a month just doing that. The cool thing is that $6,000, you know what he did with it that first month? He bought a four-wheeler. Now, some people would say, wait, he blew the money. Like, yeah, but listen, he bought that four-wheeler. It also gave him permission to take off Saturdays off work because he was working 6 days a week, never seeing his family. Well, now he's taking off Saturdays and he's taking that four-wheeler with his family and he's having fun and enjoying time with them. And I remember when I got to meet his wife face-to-face for the first time, she started bawling. She's like, you don't understand. Like we got our dad back. We got our husband back. Like we have a family again because we got that four-wheeler and we freed up that $6,000 a month. I mean, that's the difference you want to make in your own life is how do I free up so much cash that now I have more options? I can really buy my time back. And that's what they did for them too.
All right. So one more question for you. It may sound like a repeat question. If you can, because I'm sure you, in your years of experience, you've met someone you gave all this stuff to and they go, oh, I can't because I don't make enough or whatever the long list of excuses of I can't. I'm sure you've heard many of them. What is one thing someone can do to turn those I can't into I cans?
It's all perspective, right? Well, for example, when people say, well, my situation is too difficult. Listen, were you in a worse situation than me? I mean, that's the one thing. I'm probably one of the financial guys that could not come from a place of judgment, right? Because for me, I'm like, I was over $1 million in debt. In the hole, I was short $15,000 a month, that I couldn't afford, right? And that, by the way, even if I was debt free, I was still in the hole because there was business expenses and everything else happening, and we didn't have enough money coming in. I mean, that was a stressful time. So when someone says, it's just not going to work for me, no, it's because you're not going to work for it. Like it really is a matter of commitment and perspective. Because I can guarantee there's been people in worse situations than you that have already done better. So the question is are you going to be the victim of this story or are you going to be the hero? No one wants to watch a movie about a victim, right? Like no one likes those movies. They want to see how the hero overcomes, no matter how challenging it is. Especially when the hero's back is against the wall and they want to quit. That's actually when everybody gets into the story. They're like, what is this hero going to do to get out of it? This is your perfect opportunity to be the hero of your own story and to show yourself what is possible. And I'll tell you, I mean, I've been through thick and thin. I've been through divorces. I've been through financial failures, business failures and things like that. But I came back stronger every time. So no matter where you think you are, there's always something you can do. Even if it's just as simple as taking that first step out of that book, Beyond Rice and Beans, and just start tracking your money, however little or much it is, start tracking it, be real with yourself, look at where you are honestly and say, great, this is where I am. Don't put judgment on your situation, by the way. Like just look at it as if you're looking at a stranger's money and look at that situation and say, all right, what would I recommend to this stranger or to this friend? If this was my friend, what would I say to them? And step yourself, step away, detach yourself. Now that's pretty hard for a lot of people to do. If you can't do that, great. Find somebody else to do it for you, right? Have somebody that can help mentor you and guide you through it, whoever it might be. So that's the key, is that don't fret about whether you can do it or not, because the truth is that there's always somebody out there that's proven it, that's already done it. So you can do it too.
That is all the time we have for you today on Healthy and Wealthy Conversations. I want to thank our guests for Smiles, for stopping on by and sharing, and of course you, the audience, for watching. Have a great day. Bye.